Bonjour, class. Okay, today you have El Shucklenator with you, and I will be telling you, no, I'll be teaching you how to learn Latin American history. It will be a colonial experience about people and issues in Latin America. Yeah, it's gonna be wonderful. Okay, so open your textbooks, please, to chapter 1. Yeah. By the way, this is the 2nd edition. Okay, so, sorry, contents pages. Yeah. All right, so. Oh, there's a lot of text in this. Okay, that's a receipt. Terribly sorry about this. Okay. No, that's a kill. Alright. So, we're gonna start with chapter 2. Alright? So, real quick, does anyone know anything about Spain during the Reconquest? Well, neither do I, so we're gonna learn today. After 711, the Muslims controlled nearly all of Iberia. Iberia, of course, being the Iberian Peninsula. It's like the Portuguese area, like, you know, Portugal. It's up there, like with Spain and everything. Yeah, that's what they're talking about. Just so some geographical context for you, real quick. But okay, so after 711, I assume this is AD. Yeah. The Muslims controlled nearly all of Iberia, but a few Christian realms survived in the least productive lands to the far north. And from these remnants grew the kingdoms of Leon, Castile, Aragon, and Portugal, surprisingly. Yeah, Portugal. Yeah, remember that? We were talking about it a few seconds ago. Yeah, Portugal. The Reconquest began as a struggle of Christian kings and nobles to regain their lost lands and serfs. But early in the 9th century, when the tomb of St. James, I assume St. James of England or something like that, yeah, so I just lost my page on the book real quick. Okay, here we are. Supposedly found in northwest Spain, became the center of the famous pilgrimage of Santiago de Compostela, and gave Spain a warrior patron saint. It took on the character of a crusade. 7 centuries of fighting left an indelible mark on Spanish history and culture. In this reading, a seasoned Hispanist, Derek W. Lomax, suggested that between 1050 and 1250, Spain transferred from the Islamic culture, which was past its zenith, to become part of Western Christendom, and argues that after the fall of Granada, I assume this is not the place like in the Pacific Ocean. That would be a bit silly, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, I assume it's some place that's also in like Europe/Africa. Past its zenith, became part of Western Christendom, and hours after folk in 1492, no other European society was prepared, as well as Spain, to conquer and administer the populous areas of the New World. It is hardly surprising that a process lasting 7 centuries should have given rise to innumerable differences of interpretation, especially, alright, this is a historiographical context, so we're just going to skip this. What we really care about, so we're just going to skip to like chapter 3 real quick. I'm sorry if the gameplay is not your satisfactory, but you know, it's difficult to play and read a book at the same time. But of course, Shuckles, along with providing driving lessons, is really good at multitasking. So, alright. Now at chapter 4, we have a little quote at the top. I have found many islands inhabited by numberless people. This is a little quote by Christopher Columbus. He's the guy that, you know, sailed the 7 seas. Pretty cool guy. He famously thought he found India, but really it was America. That's why he called the people in America Indians, hence Native American Indians in today's world. The quote read... Oh wait, no, this isn't a quote. I'm sorry, I made a calcological error. But, you know, it's more of a paraphrase. Columbus's letter describing his first voyage to the New World was addressed to Louis de Santangel, the manager of King Ferdinand's household accounts, who had been instrumental in convincing Queen Isabel of Spain. I know that much, yeah. Queen Isabel of Spain. A prominent historical figure in the Middle Ages, I believe, yes. Queen Isabel of Spain to support the endeavor as a relatively cheap gamble with potentially great reward. The letter, written on February 16th, 1493, summarized the trip and its results. But there is generally agreement among scholars that much of it was fabrication. A tissue, this is a quote, quotation mark, a tissue of exaggerations, misconceptions, and outright lies. Columbus deliberately inflated the evidence to support his main contention that he had found lands of boundless wealth. And his unbridled optimism and wonder over the marvels he had found and observed was genuine. If the letter historicity is undoubtful, its literary success was unparalleled. Unparalleled. That means unparalleled is a word people sometimes use to express that that something is, you know, beyond the pale, if you will. Like it's almost absolute. It's, you know, some could even construe the word to mean never before seen. That's also another context you could use it in. Yeah, unparalleled. Within a few years, it went through 8 editions in the original Spanish, was paraphrased in Italian verse, and translated into a Latin version that was read all over Europe. All over Europe. That could mean what would soon become Germany, the Italian kingdoms. Italy, of course, was not unified until the late 19th century. England, Wales, Scotland, maybe. Spain. I guess maybe Russia, if they wanted to read this letter from Christopher Columbus. I guess maybe Russia would have their little, you know, translation in Latin. I think the Russians knew how to read Latin. Of course, they had a different alphabet, but that's neither here nor there. Yeah, Europe. That's basically a definition of what Europe means. In the view of Emir Rodriguez Monegal, and this is another quotation mark, America, as a literary and poetic subject, was invented by this hyperbolic Genoese, end quotation mark. Now, that's quite poetic, you see, because we can gather a lot of insight from that. It's reasonable to assume anyone without a doctorate in Spanish colonization or Spanish heritage would know what that meant. But of course, I, Shuckles, know what that means. Moving swiftly on to chapter 6. Chapter 6. Okay, page 82. Viceroy Francisco de Tolened's attack on Inca rule. The Incas, yeah. I believe the Incas were a civilization in South America. They were quite civil, quite they had all the trademarks of a civilization. One could assume, procure, elevate, understand, infer. Yeah. The best example of the effect produced by Fray Bartolomé de las Casas. Theoretical writings concerning the just title Spain held to America occurred in Peru, Peru being a country in South America. It's often confused with Chile, and it has a lot of snakes in it, but that doesn't really characterize it heavily because a lot of other countries in South America have snakes. Yeah, Peru. It's a good holiday destination, I've heard. I mean, I, Shucklenator, have personally never been to Peru, but Peru is I assume it's a nice place to visit, maybe. Moving swiftly, the Peru occurred in Peru during the rule of Viceroy Francisco de Toledo. Hey, remember him? Yeah, he was a prominent figure in this chapter. Yeah, he'll be on the test. Better remember that name heavily. He was a wise lawgiver, energetic administrator, and greatest viceroy Spain ever sent to Peru. See, the key wording there is greatest viceroy Spain ever sent to Peru, as in the viceroys, because back in this day, Spain, of course, had a monarchy, and thus one could presume that because of this, the viceroys, the dukes, the counts, the nobility, they basically acted as what in our modern day would be civil servants, ambassadors, all those things, you know? The stuff that's responsible for foreign affairs. That's how monarchies basically worked. Yeah. So he was the greatest of those people. And who laid the basis for Spanish rule there during the years 1569 to 1582. That's a period of like 13 years. Before his coming, Peru had a most turbulent and bloody history, probably rife with conflict. That's usually what they mean by bloody history. A conflict usually assumed. And Toledo arrived with one great aim, to establish without question in his territory the position of the King of Spain. In other words, Peru became a Spanish colony, and it was his job to make the people, or the colonists in Peru, and or possible natives, respect, without question, the legitimacy of the rule that was... I'm getting bored of McCree, just I'm gonna get back to my spot real quick. To respect the rule of the King of Spain as, you know, the ultimate lawgiver, because that's how monarchies work. Yeah, presently, with a view to establish Spain's judicial title to Peru. Ah, see? That's what I mean. He was there to make it so the king was the utmost lawgiver. He was trying to ascertain law in Peru. Yeah, usually comes with the job of being a viceroy, I would assume. I've never personally been a viceroy. I don't know a lot of viceroys, but I assume, you know, the job is pretty much what it says on the tin. One of his earliest acts was to execute the Inca. Oh, remember them, that civilization? Yeah, well, the story, as we've just discovered, has been rapidly progressing, and now it is this guy's job, Viceroy Francisco de Toledo's... Oh. Shit. Oh, hang on, I just need to sit down for a second, I just gotta think about this, Okay, apparently this is pretty self-explanatory, really, because it says, as I read at the beginning, Viceroy Francisco del Toldo's attack on Inca rule. Well, it's pretty self-explanatory by this point, really. You know, it says he's going to attack the Inca. You know, I mean, that is the title of Chapter 6, really. Huh. Alright, turning to Chapter 8. Actually, no. Oh. We're turning to page 1112. Okay, 1112. This is a sub-chapter, I believe, in this textbook called The City of Mexico. As soon as the messengers had been dispatched, we set out for Mexico. Mexico being the country directly south of the United States and directly north of Colombia. Colombia being a country in South America. As soon as the messengers had been dispatched, we set out for Mexico, and as the people of Huexotzingo and Chalco had told us that Montezuma being a leader of the Aztecs, according to the Civilization series, or whether he should attack us, and all his priests had answered that his Huichilobobos had said he was to allow us to enter and that then he could kill us. As I have already related in the chapter that deals with this subject, and as we are but human and feared death, we never ceasingly think about it. As that country is very thickly peopled, we made short marches and commended ourselves to God and to Our Lady being, I assume, Queen Isabel of Spain, who was about 16. Yeah, I think so, around this time period. His blessed mother, and talked about how and by what means we could enter the city being of Mexico. And it put courage into our hearts to think that as our Lord Jesus Christ had vouchsafed us protection through past dangers, we would likewise guard us from the power of the Mexicans. Okay, now from this we could probably glean that Mexico has since seceded from the Spanish Empire. I could presume. I'm not entirely sure. We are sort of skipping around the chapters here. But it's not a far-fetched assumption. It's not a far-fetched assumption, folks. We went to sleep in a town called Iztapaltenango, where half the houses are in the water and the other half on dry land, where there is a small mountain, and now is an inn there, and they gave us a good supper. The next day in the morning we arrived at a broad causeway. A causeway being like a road, I think. Potentially over water. Not to be confused with a bridge. And continued our march towards Iztapalpapa. And when we saw so many cities and villages built in the water, they tell of it in the legend of Amadis on account of the great towers and quays and buildings rising from the water, and all built of masonry. And some of our soldiers even asked whether the things that we saw were not a dream. It is not to be wondered at that I here write it down in this manner, for there is so much to think over, and that I do not know how to describe it, seeing things as we did. that had never been heard or seen before, nor even dreamt about. Thus, we arrived near Iztapalpa to behold the splendor of the other Carcuses who came out to meet us. Who were the lord of the town named Kutihahook, and the lord of Kulukukan, both of them near relations of Montezuma. Montezuma, the Aztec leader I told us about, moments ago, it seems, although it feels like years. And then, when we entered the city of Iztapalpa, the appearance of the palaces in which they lodged us, how spacious and well built they were, of beautiful stonework in cedar wood, cedar being a type of tree. And the wood of other sweet-scented trees, so there was not just cedar present. With great rooms and courts being, similar to courtyards, a type of garden that usually accompanied noble homes in the Middle Ages. Wonderful to behold, covered with awnings of cotton. And that is today where we will leave our adventurers. Thank you for tuning in.
Thanks.
Next time, we will pick up in Chapter 7.